It's never been easier, and it will continue to get easier to market with personalization at scale. If you're a marketer of a firm with many advisors, you now have many potential marketing angles. And for the first time with AI, we're not going to be rewarding the loudest marketer. We're going to be rewarding the best fits.
Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Matchup. I'm Joe Anthony, your host for this episode. I'm here today with two awesome entrepreneurs in the world of wealth management marketing. I have to tell you, I've known Eden and Brian over the last couple of years on the conference circuit. And what's really drawn my attention to my two guests today, the fact that both of them are coming at the innovation in this industry, trying to help advisors accelerate and address an issue that frankly has been painful for years, which is the lackluster organic growth. So as we dive in here today's episode, let me formally introduce Brian Thorp, founder of Wealthtender, and Eden Ovadia, who is the co-founder of Finny. If anyone's been paying attention on the conference circuit, these two firms are making a lot of noise, a lot of buzz, a lot of great things. And they happen to be operating in two areas that I spent a lot of time on that are really important to me. Number one, how to make AI work better for firms in their marketing. And two, helping the CMOs and other leaders in these organizations solve the organic growth issue. So this is something I'm totally excited for, and to be an awesome conversation. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'll speak for myself. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Echoing Eden's excitement. I'm happy to be here, Joe. Appreciate it.
Hey, two of you two kind of take some time out, but let's get into it. Because what I want to do first is set us up with your how I got here story. No one arrives at where they are today on purpose all the time. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you set out with one thing and something sparked your attention. Eden, ladies first. Tell us how you got to where you are today with Finny.
Yeah. It's certainly not to your point where I expected to be, but it did quite happen all serendipitously. And so my background is in machine learning and engineering. That's what I studied in college. And I happened to have done my thesis in machine learning applications and fintech. And so I was always in and around the industry. I would say that I joke that I sold out after college and I went to work in private equity for a handful of years at Boston Consulting Group, doing a lot of diligences for the M&A activity we're seeing in the industry that is causing headlines every single day. And so we were diligencing on a lot of those deals. And it was through that work over a few years that it became very clear the gap in the industry for organic growth and the importance of this. And so obviously when you're looking at acquisitions and firm multiples, the number one thing that people look at is organic growth rates. And then you ask the firms, well, what's your strategy to increase these numbers? And it's, we're just waiting for referrals. And we're just passively, running these strategies. There just hadn't seemed to be a deterministic way to help firms grow in a repeatable, scalable way where you can say, hey, if I invest these amount of dollars and I do this activity, I can get to this growth. And so in 2024, early 2024, I convinced two of the smartest people I know to quit their jobs along with me, and we started Finny. Really, the goal was how can we help advisors grow organically? So anything that'll drive organic growth, whether it's new clients or share of wallet in your existing clients, is something that we can help with.
And I got to warn you, my mom actually advised me against hanging out with people who were trying to get me to quit my job. So the fact that you got friends like that, those are for real friends, taking your word for it. That's a good backstory. And Brian, a little different journey for you. Tell us about how you got to Wealthtender.
Sure. So I spent 22 years at Invesco prior to launching Wealthtender in 2019. Had a great corporate career there. Had worked my way up. Most recently was the head of the U.S. key account team, and really enjoyed everything I was doing. It's still a tremendous company, great people, but had that entrepreneurial bug. And throughout my career, have seen when there have been regulatory changes, how that creates opportunities in the marketplace. And my aha moment back in 2019 was speculation that the SEC was going to finally come off its prohibition of advisors being able to use online reviews and testimonials in their marketing. And so I saw that as an opportunity for what ultimately would become Wealthtender to become the industry's first online review platform designed for regulatory compliance, very similar to a ZocDoc for physicians that helps consumers find physicians by location, specialization, and being able to compare and research based on online reviews, and bringing that into the marketplace with a compliance-first approach.
Well, and again, both of you from the different inspirations, it's actually awesome to me as someone who helps our clients market and showcase themselves, that you develop tools that are just accomplices in this. And so let me set up the rest of this episode. When I was thinking about pairing guests, now, Anyone who watches the show knows that you don't know who you're guesting with until you show up. So the two of you just met right before we started recording here, which is awesome. But the timing's perfect on two things. Number one, I get asked all the time at these conferences questions like, what's more important, inbound or outbound marketing? Guess what, folks? The answer is both. And in today's episode, I like to think of what Eden's doing is really very much on the outbound side, right? And Brian, you're the inbound side. And not to say that you don't cross over, but it's a very complimentary story. So I think we're gonna get a lot of juicy information for our audience today based upon your perspectives and also understanding what's behind all this. Because I think most firms have tried a strategy, but they're not trying all the strategies. And Lord knows, no one's really nailing it. Our first question about this is this. We both of your notes pointed out just the paltry net average growth of firms in the industry. Call it 2%, 3%, whatever it isn't amazing. And both of you also cited recognizing that fact as the issue why you wanted to accelerate the development of your businesses. Perfect. So Brian, I'll start with you. When you look at this issue and like that sort of someone actually called a cataclysmic problem within the industry, how do you feel like your business fits in addressing this? And what role does the general concept of social proof play in this, in a maybe a post referral era that we're in?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only anecdotally can I share what we've seen, but also research that we've conducted to validate some of the very reasons that we know this is so important. So, as I mentioned, we really replicated a lot of what we've seen work well in other trust based professions like doctors and lawyers, where similar platforms have existed for quite some time. And we know that physicians, attorneys that have reviews on platforms within those professions have a higher conversion rate of leads that are coming out to their directory profiles and ultimately are able to accelerate that social proof in order to convert more prospects into clients. And what we've seen in the wealth management space today is a relatively slow uptick in the adoption of online reviews, and not relatively, it's surprisingly low uptake, right? So May 4th of this year, yesterday, was the 5-year anniversary of the SEC marketing rule becoming effective. And today it's fewer than 10% of advisors and wealth management firms that are utilizing online reviews in their marketing whatsoever. And what we know from research is that even after receiving a referral, and again, I love that we're going to be talking about Finny and the role that it can play in helping connect with prospects. What we know though is even with that referral to an advisor, that individual, the first thing that 83% of people said they're going to do is go online and look for online reviews. And so that is the fact base that we're operating in. But we're also operating in a world where 8 out of 10 prospects are looking for something online that 9 out of 10 advisors aren't providing. So it's an incredible opportunity for advisors to simply take advantage of something that's not only proven in other professions, but that research validates is really important to drive conversions and attract more prospects within our profession.
And Brian, I'm glad you hit on that 5-year anniversary because it speaks to how slowly change can happen. And obviously, we're sitting here with at a 10% number, but at the same time, uh, those firms that are in that 10% probably, maybe very likely, are also Eden's customers because I'm betting those early adopters are also some of the same people that have found their way to Finny, right? And so I'll turn the mic over to Eden for a second. So you think about that issue of organic growth, and you think about where Finny comes in on this. So a smart firm might get on board with a service like Brian's, right? And then plug you in to get going and start harvesting opportunities. Walk us through that mindset where you talk to an advisor that recognizes they need to juice their organic growth and get them to think about how Finny really goes to work for them. And I know you can answer this a lot of ways because you have a lot going on, but and start with that mindset shift of conditioning the advisor or the firm to say, yes, we're going to do this new way.
Yeah. We say the only qualification for an advisor to come to Finny is, do you want to grow? And that seems funny, but that's not every advisor, just depending on where they are in their life cycle of their business. And so if you'd like to grow, we have something for you is the general lens. And so like the process of bringing on an advisor onto our platform or new firm is super straightforward. We we bring them on. We have agents that can essentially like research them, look at their website, look at their testimonials, look at their content that exists on their website and like build these profiles for them and then help them identify niches or ideal client profiles that they have what we call like a high propensity or a high likelihood to convert. And so the idea is if we know everything about you, we know everything there is to know about a potential lead and a world of leads, we can tell you who to spend your time on and who is going to have the highest likelihood of converting. And then we can actually help you do that too. And so the idea for Finny was like growth even when you're sleeping or on the golf course. And so we have like automations that you just need to tell us, hey, I want to go after people who went to my high school who now just are business owners who are looking up exit planning keywords online and are doing over $2 million in revenue and are 59. And we can actually do all of that and create that segment and create content targeting that segment and then automate that process. And so you just need to wait and you sit back as leads come in.
When you look at that, people say, well, isn't this sort of like cold calling? Didn't we say we had to get away from cold calling? Like, how would you counter that feedback? And if someone said, hey, is this just a redressed cold call?
Yeah, I mean, this whole industry is based off of trust, and like trust is really hard to establish in like the cold prospecting world. And so the idea was like, how can we actually try to make it like not as cold using data and like trying to like model affinity and like likelihoods of converting through similarities. And so if I work, and this is a real example, if I'm an advisor on Finny and I work with executives at Sherwin-Williams, for example, I might reach out to using Finny to other executives I don't currently work with, mentioning that I work with others with their permission, of course, and mentioning that I'm, one of the experts in their compensation plans and their structures. And all of a sudden, that's not cold unsolicited. It feels like a little bit warmer, and a little bit, a little more high trust signals. And that's the idea. It's like creating those moments that are a little bit more trust based in like creating them out of thin air, basically, like that typically would be cold.
And it's like you wanted to ask Brian the next question because the trust based is literally foundational to Wealthtender, as far as I see. I mean, Brian, correct me, but when you think about that, if every advisor knows that part of their calling card is the ability to be trusted and seen as credible, why are we only at 10%? Remind me again, what's going on?
So I will admit there is a small regulatory impediment that remains for state registered advisors in certain states like California and Illinois. And that impediment, fortunately, thanks to the North American Securities Administrators Association, NASA, is likely going to be resolved later this year as they've encouraged those remaining states to remove that impediment and modernize their rules, just as the SEC did back in 2021. What we've seen is that in the first early days, the impediment for firms, even if they were SEC registered, were compliance officers who understandably had other parts of the marketing rule that they had to address first. And it just took a little bit of time for them to come around and recognize that there were compliant approved platforms to address their regulatory concerns. Flash forward to today, it's no longer the regulatory impediments or the compliance impediments that we see. Rather, it's just inertia and a little bit of the imposter syndrome. And even that's starting to subside as advisors and wealth management firms are increasingly seeing their peers and competitors with online reviews and recognizing, and with the data that we can show to support this, 99% of all reviews that come in, these are solicited reviews, naturally are 5 stars. People love their advisors. And more importantly, of course, is what they're saying about their experience. But that imposter syndrome, what if I get a negative review, clearly is a non-issue. But nonetheless, inertia, I would say today is the biggest factor.
Well, and so I have to ask, and this is a question you both can address, which is the idea of when you're coming up with these solutions, because communications with prospects and clients do come under compliance consideration. Are you really selling Wealthtender or Finny to the CMO or the CCO, the Chief Compliance Officer, right? Like, who's really calling the shots with this? And how would you answer that, Brian?
Sure. So everything we've designed is to be the Boy Scout in the industry from a compliance perspective. And first and foremost, that's where we need to ensure that we have all of the belts and suspenders approach in place to satisfy those requirements, because there's no point in having a marketing platform if you don't start and address those issues first. So absolutely, compliance is critical. But then we want to ensure that with the marketing platform, everything that we're doing really resonates and it's not restricted or constrained in terms of the value because we put so many compliance considerations in place that it's not effective. Just the opposite. By virtue of having those compliance considerations in place, having the transparency of disclosures that appear with the reviews online that are stipulated and required by the SEC. That actually works in the favor of advisors because that's the type of information that AI answer engines, tools like ChatGPT and Gemini are looking for to validate. In fact, if reviews are authentic, if they exist on an independent third party platform and are reflective of the actual trust and authentic experiences of the clients that have shared that feedback.
Well, and that I think that's great context for people. And how would you answer that discussion? So I asked Brian on the front end of that, who's really driving the decision when it comes to adopting this technology? And are you finding it's a CMO? Is it the lead advisor? Who is that person that's driving this adoption?
It's funny. I think originally it was the individual advisors. So we were one of the most requested platforms from advisors to their broker dealers or to their RAs last year. And so typically it might come up from bottoms up, but I joke that like we're a CMO and CCO's like dream platform because they way prefer, similar to Brian, that they use a platform built for financial advisors only, purpose built with compliance in mind, than trying to force fit some other marketing tool that has no idea anything about this industry or the SEC or FINRA regulations. And so, similar to Brian, I mean, we've built with the SEC and FINRA rules in mind from the very beginning. We actually originally, this is a fun fact that's not very well known, we actually were registered with the SEC as an internet advisor early days and went through that process and really to make sure, just similar to really be like caution first and err on the side of caution in this case and make sure where everything was buttoned up. We ended up withdrawing our registration after they said, "Hey, this you actually didn't need to register based off your business model." But that entire experience was a massive learning experience for us to make sure that everything we built is compliant and has compliance first. And so it's been a really easy conversation. Typically, it's like, "Oh, thank God, you guys know all of the questions we're going to ask, and here's a diligence packet that has 1,000 questions that you might want to know specifically if you're an RA or a broker dealer," and it's a very easy conversation.
So let's get into what you're doing in a little bit in terms of giving advisors more, because I feel like with both of your stories, there's more to Wealthhtender, more to Finny than just the reviews or just like sort of the cultivation of cold contacts into like there's more to it, right? So, Ed, when you think about it, I mean, let me start there here. I've actually heard more than one time Finny described as the hinge for financial advisors. Not sure if that's an apt description, but I've heard it. And then people talk about obviously like, hey, cold emails going out. But from what I've seen, that's actually just a small percentage of what you can do on Finny. What's one of like the more overlooked or under discussed things that you would want to draw people? I want to start thinking about, okay, how does a tool like this work and create value in the advisor marketing mix?
Yeah, we definitely started in the realm of like cold outbound and prospecting and cold emailing, and we have grown so much. And we just released a platform called Hunter, which really acts as your AI chief growth officer. It's a full stack agent. It can do everything from review your past performances of campaigns and suggest improvements. You can also look at your LinkedIn network connections and find money in motion events or opportunities within your own network or dormant leads. And so one massive opportunity that we're starting to see a lot of advisors take us up on is, hey, I have this set of leads, whether they're in my CRM or somewhere else that I've gotten from the 10, 20 years I've been in business, whether it's my LinkedIn network, leads that came to webinar and never converted, leads I paid for. Can you actually upload them onto Finny? Can you guys enrich them and tell me everything there is to know about them? Help me find those like unknown millionaires or the people that I spoke to 10 years ago that are now looking up alternative investments online and I can just call and follow up with. And so like fishing within your own pond is a huge opportunity that we're now starting to see like a lot of uptick in. And yeah, that I think that's probably like one of the more under marketed aspects of what we do at Finny.
And I think that's really helpful context because again, seeing that launch of Hunter last month obviously got a lot of attention, but I think the pace of change is just so fast with any technology these days, but particularly with AI. And so it's good to know that. Brian, what would you highlight as something about Wealthtender that often was under discussed or overlooked when people think about, well, how do I partner with a firm like this? What am I getting out of it?
Sure. So most people today think about the online reviews, the compliance solution to collect them, to publish them on Wealthtender, and then, of course, the tools to be able to publish them compliantly on advisor websites and tools to be able to promote them in social media. But separate from all of the review benefits, we're also doing a great job of helping advisors show up more prominently, more frequently in Google and AI search results based on the types of clients that they're looking to attract. So if they do have a particular niche or demographic of players that they're clients that they're looking to serve, we have different tools and ways to reach them. So, as Eden mentioned earlier, actually, a client that's maybe, or an advisor that's going after employees or executives at Sherwin-Williams, if you were to go to Google today or to put into a chat GPT, I'm looking for a financial advisor that specializes in serving Sherwin-Williams employees, you'll actually see a resource published on Wealthtender highlighting an advisor in our community that specializes in exactly that. And so pairing that presence on Wealthtender with a tool like Finny becomes really powerful because now you're reaching out to employees at that particular target demographic, whether it's a particular employer, and then they might be going online to see, well, does this advisor truly specialize in helping employees at Sherwin-Williams? And they see that social proof on the Wealthtender platform, ideally even with reviews from Sherwin-Williams employees that have talked about their experience and how the advisor has helped them approach retirement. And that's just one example of how we can really help advisors with their SEO, with their answer engine optimization, and specific areas based on the types of clients that they're looking to attract above and beyond the online review features.
Hey,
Well,
Joe, yeah,
go
can I
ahead,
ask
Eden.
a future
Yeah, please.
question to Brian?
Sure.
I'm super curious. We're starting to wade into the content component as well, specifically on like LinkedIn and blog posts and helping in like niche marketing create content for SEO and what we call like GEO or AI search optimization. Very similar to what you just described. I'm curious how you guys thought about having the content posted on your website, Wealthtender, versus enabling it to be posted on the advisor's website to boost their own SEO or GEO.
Sure, great question. We're a big fan of both. We think it's not one or the other, but really a combination. So, first and foremost, and this is a topic for an entirely another podcast episode, we encourage advisors to ensure they have a robust and modern website. We know, of course, that many don't. That's such low hanging fruit and an opportunity for advisors if they do specialize in particular demographic or employees at Sherwin Williams or a niche to have landing pages dedicated to those particular areas because it's great if you're talking the talk, but you want your website to really help walk the walk. And then taking it a step further, if you do have online reviews, testimonials that are specific to how you help families with special needs or help employees at Sherwin Williams, you can now start to pepper those testimonials into those specific landing pages. So the goal is not to replace, we very much strongly encourage advisors to have that content on their own website. Love hearing that you're going down that path to take advantage of opportunities to maybe do LinkedIn posts and LinkedIn articles. But then one of the things that we're able to do, thanks to the strength of the domain authority that we've established over the last 6 years, is generally speaking, when we do create content featuring an advisor specializing in a particular area, thanks to that domain authority, it's going to be very likely that it shows up more prominently and more quickly within Google, within the different AI search tools. So the goal is to really triangulate that content not only on Wealthtender, but also on the advisor's website and with the work that you're doing on social media as well.
Well, and Brian, I wanted to piggyback on your answer here because I think it's very relevant for this discussion. I think when you're talking about AI search optimization and whether it's better to post on Wealthtender site or their own site, one thing I've been saying for years, you can read my blogs from 2014 that, or even earlier, that marketing has gotten disgustingly fragmented. Where you've got to show up in more places, not less. I don't know if he's disgustingly fragmented in 2014, but I mean, that's the point. It's like it's so nauseating for someone who's trying to get their arms around everything, right? To be able to tackle that. But we've seen, as Brian pointed out, high domain authority websites posting content that's relevant to who you are, what you're doing, how you're trying to help people is only going to help you stand up better in the world of AI search. And so at the same time, the most highly relevant, highly associated content to you is your website. Both channels have to be part of that. I think maybe the first step for someone who's got a new website or isn't fully optimized or doesn't have a long SEO or AEO tailwind behind them, yeah, maybe leveraging Wealthtender site is the first place to go until you have if you had to choose would be my answer. But just it's a great discussion, and because I really think part of this is to be able to do the best practices of implementation behind the actual execution of the reviews or the testimonials. So awesome stuff. And actually, which leads me to my next question, because which thinking about this, and I'm sure you have answers for both of you in terms of like what makes the difference between advisors that maximize your tool versus the ones that don't. And you talk about, I know for a fact that we have advisors that have started using testimonials and reviews and say, well, that really hasn't changed the game for us. And there's others that are like foaming at the mouth, swearing by it. And so I'd love to hear, what do you think is a difference when you see common traits of successful people that have adopted Finny or Wealthtender? And I'll let you go first. Like, what are the success factors when the people are employing these things?
If you asked me this question a month ago, I would have said advisors who are more marketing oriented are seeing success on Finny without a doubt. So they come to us with an idea, with a campaign idea, with a niche that they want to target, and then we can do the heavy lifting from there. We've actually like flipped that on its head, the paradigm, and now it's any advisor who wants to grow, we can be the marketing expert, and our by we I mean hunter or agent. Um, and so it really used to be like not an equal playing field at all. If you're an advisor who has a knack for marketing, maybe has someone on your team doing it, you're going to see like significant outlier results. And now with Hunter, anyone who wants to grow can figure out a way to grow because we can take the heavy lifting and the creative thinking and the idea generation away from you and just have the agent help you do that.
Well, and having that agent working on their behalf takes off the onus of having to have a CMO or marketing director necessarily, which we'll get to that question in a little bit. So, Brian, what would you say are some of the common elements of people that successfully leverage Wealth Tender and the review platform and so forth?
Sure. So, importantly, of course, we really try to do as much heavy lifting as we can, creating the profiles, walking the advisors step by step through how to get started with online reviews compliantly, and then the tools to be able to invite their clients to do that and then make it easy to compliantly get those displayed on Wealth Tender. And it's more of a carrot and stick approach where we lean towards the carrot, but sometimes feel like we need to pull out the stick a little bit. And by that, I mean, we want to celebrate the advisors that have joined Wealth Tender that are collecting reviews that are now part of that 10% of advisors that can take advantage of that and just know that if they sit back and do nothing, those reviews are absolutely helping them passively strengthen their reputation online. However, we do like to pull out the stick and say, congrats. It's terrific that you have these reviews, but if you really want to put them to work, let's think about all the different ways that you can proactively utilize them in your marketing efforts, whether that's compliant tools that we make available to start to incorporate them into your social media so you can start to really jazz up that social media feed and help more people that aren't yet working with you see all the great work that you are doing. And then in the course of an advisor that might be using prospecting tools like Finny, the opportunity to incorporate those testimonials strategically into that outreach or into nurturing campaigns so that now beyond demonstrating your expertise and the reasons why that consumer may want to work with you as their advisor, they're also hearing firsthand through the words of your own clients all the reasons that they may want to do that. So, all the different ways that you can now start to incorporate those testimonials into your marketing activities. And naturally, for the firms that join Wealth under multiple advisors, they have a CMO. But we see a lot of chief marketing officers that are doing phenomenal work and really starting to introduce those testimonials across different campaigns, even postcard mailings out to their community. But ultimately, for a lot of the independent and solo advisors, that's where we spend a little more time focusing on education and really helping to provide them with a greater understanding of congrats on getting the reviews, but that's really just the first step. Here's how to really start to incorporate them throughout your marketing and the fabric of everything that you do.
All right, so you think about the dynamics today for adoption in the industry. Will any of these new tools, Finny, Wealth Tender, otherwise, we know that a lot of times there's a challenge between firms of a certain size. Bigger firms might have marketing leaders who drive the process, the resources to pay for implementation, but the smaller firms can just act and they're more nimble. What is that like in the world of your efforts to get firms to adopt Finny and Wealth Tender? Ed, and I'll let you take the first stab at that.
Yeah. I think that's like a great point. So if you're a firm, and typically we see that if you're a sub 500 million AUM firm, you probably don't have a dedicated marketing function. And so it's every advisor for themselves. Growth is, in the hands of the advisor. And then it's really up to them to choose to adopt technology. And the barrier to get technology adopted at those smaller firms is a little easier, right? You have less of a compliance overhead typically. At larger firms, when you have centralization of marketing, we actually have a different platform, whether we call it Finny for marketing teams, that is specifically for centralized functions that can do, a small group can grow on behalf of dozens or hundreds of advisors. The interesting point that you brought up is it is absolutely correct that in those firms with a centralized marketing function, it is harder for the individual advisor to get access to marketing tools because it is the firm structure by design. They are not supposed to necessarily be doing the marketing. It is supposed to be the pros doing it. And so you end up with this interesting dynamic at larger firms where you still have advisors who are entrepreneurial driven and want to grow and have a bit of friction with that centralized marketing team. And in the case of Finny, we both things can be true. We can sell to the individual advisor and the marketing team, and there's no conflict there.
And then, Brian, how would you answer that in your experience?
A lot of similarity from what Eden just explained with Finny. And in the case of Wealthtender, especially in the early days, the first movers, early adopters of our platform were the solo advisors that truly had that ability to get started without impediments when they were ready. Today, the fastest growing segment would be advisory firms that do have a chief marketing officer or at least a marketing lead that are interested in implementing reviews across their team. Now, with that said, we do see as you move up the size of the firm, there is a little bit slower of a path to get started because some firms or CMOs are a little reluctant to pull the trigger across the board. But that's where we really recommend, if it's a larger firm, to get started with a pilot, put a couple of advisors that are very likely to be the eager ones that are entrepreneurial, as Eden suggested, that are hungry to put themselves out there, begin collecting reviews, and they actually then serve as leaders for the other advisors at the firm to then follow, where they can see the influence those reviews are starting to then have on the online reputation of those early adopter advisors within the firm, and makes it easier for other advisors to not only get more excited about following, but of course everybody gets a little bit of competitive pressure as well to say, oh, look at all those great reviews, I know I can get tremendous reviews as well.
Brian, I want to take a little tangent off your answer there because you hit something that I think is worth circling back to with the idea of we have seen in our own work, and I think I've told both of you on the side of a conference somewhere that about we built something called the Gregory Influence Engine. Last September, we launched this platform that helps firms get a grasp of how they're showing up in AI search, whether it's the prompts behind it, how they're stacking up versus peer group, and things like that. We've seen time and time again that things like Wealthtender and frankly directories, even like Smart Asset, are better to be involved with than not in terms of winning that piece of the puzzle. The other thing we've also seen is that across the board, anything with social proof has also helped optimize someone's position, whether it's industry awards, publicity, reviews, but also when you're looking at it, even in our work, like, and Ed, and I feel like I'm talking like in old school language here, but building traditional HubSpot email campaigns, we saw the net success of campaigns that included social proof, like testimonials and reviews or publicity, improve the impact there. And so this really applies. And I think, what do you think is behind this as marketers, where the idea of social proof and trustworthiness has more currency today than it may have ever had, even though it's always been a trust business? How would you respond to that? Ed, and you look like you're ready to say something.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much AI slop, so much garbage out there. It is so hard. I mean, we're all technologists in marketing. It is, and for us, it's hard to discern what's real versus what's fake, and kind of just to find. And I see this all the time with new AI companies spinning up. I'm like, are you real? I'll go ask a friend who's potentially worked with them for social proof, or I'll look up their reviews online, or what we internally call these credibility boosters. What can you do to increase credibility, whether it's testimonials, whether it's mentions in press, whether it's stories and case studies you can share. And so people are just looking for that social proof, looking for that credibility, seeking it in any way that they can. And it's getting more and more important as the net noise increases online to have those markers of trust. With AI, it's so easy to create, fake content and all these statements. And at the end of the day, there's these like credibility boosters that are going to discern the reals from the fakes. And the whole industry of financial advice is people trusting people with their entire life's savings and money and their financial well-being. That's fundamentally trust-based and fundamentally a risky thing to do. And so you're going to want to cover your bases and make sure that these people they're reputable, people have talked about them online, they work with people like you. All of these things are things you want to check off before you're ever going to give someone money.
And Brian, how would you react to that same question? Like, why do you think it feels like it matters even more than ever to have that level of trust out there?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One being very specific to our profession. You go back a couple of years ago, the CFA Institute did a study that showed on a matter of trust that financial advisors ranked about the same level as auto mechanics. And a big part of that, in my opinion, is that a few years ago, you didn't see any online reviews about financial advisors. So the only thing you would see or hear about as a consumer is what, bad actor is doing on the nightly news or a Bernie Madoff situation. So this is not only important for individual advisors, but those online reviews, as we start to see adoption, not at 10%, but just like physicians and attorneys at 95%, it's going to lift the entire profession. And importantly, because this is such a trust based profession, as Eden suggested, what people want to find is, again, whether or not they feel they can trust that individual that they're thinking about working with for potentially the remainder of their lives and potentially into future generations. So that trust just can't be discounted, especially in this profession. And there's a popular PR agency just last week that I think called it the cliche crisis with regard to what advisors talk about across their websites or wealth management firms. And the language is so generic, unfortunately. When you start to incorporate those testimonials, it's a powerful way to now put in your client's own words the value that you're delivering and start to not only address and overcome that commonality in language that we see across so many advisory firm websites, but also to really reinforce in your client's own words to somebody who's skeptical of your words what it is that you do. And so that in itself becomes a powerful way to really establish that trust, is to not only share it in your own words, but now to also let your clients share it in theirs.
Well, and thanks for the shout out on our study, Brian. We did do that, and I think one of the things that we found out in that study, is as a quick aside, that there are firms that score very poorly on that rubric we came up with, and firms that do really well. Incidentally, the ones that do really well generally do pretty well in the basics of AI search optimization in terms of being able to stand out and be found. Well, that isn't universal across the board, but the coincidence is high enough that I start to think, all right, there's certain things that are working together to help firms succeed that way. And I think it goes back to anything else you're doing. I think we're talking about innovation and what Eden's firm is doing, for example, with Hunter and filling the gaps, I think, in the industry with some innovation. Eden, I want to bring this back. So with Hunter, my mind goes to that conversation where it wasn't too long ago, the conversation around AI. It was like, well, AI replace advisors. I hear that and say, well, AI's fill the blanks for needing CMOs. Am I going to be talking to someone's agent instead of talking to their CMO in order to get the PR program rolling, like things like that? And so, how do you feel like this changes things in the industry? Does it democratize the industry in terms of helping maybe smaller firms compete with scale firms in marketing because they have Hunter working for them? And what is that like in your mind?
Totally. I think when I think about like AI, I think about AI as a force multiplier. AI is not going to replace advisors, but advisors using AI are going to replace advisors that aren't. Is how I think about it, and that's happening like really quickly. In the case of Finny, uh, AI is giving and Hunter is giving access to marketing expertise and a marketing associate for firms who are solo or smaller and don't have a marketing person on their team. And then it's giving to marketing teams this agent that can work 24/7 for them and be a force multiplier. It's almost like giving them the rocket ship they need, which is why we specifically have a Finny for marketing teams platform designed to multiply the efforts of a marketing team. And then we have Finny for advisors who don't have a marketing team to kind of level the playing field and help them amplify their voice. It turns out that some of the best financial advisors are not the best marketers, and the idea is like they should have equal access to find potential new clients, and that's really the idea behind Fitty for advisors.
We've seen that there's with these tools, affordability and approachability are really a hallmark of both what you're doing. How has that changed the conversation when you do get an advisor or a firm engaged? Is that uh, front end of the conversation, or is that sort of a byproduct of their interest when you bring it up? Because again, as I said earlier, a lot of times these tools come across as either hard to implement or too costly that I'm not sure how to make it work. Do you feel like the way you've built your business has made it easier for firms to take the leap into innovation? Brian?
Yeah, it's a really thoughtful way of thinking about the innovation question. And absolutely, we wanted this to be an affordable solution for advisors and something that really becomes the fabric of all advisors. We ultimately see online reviews as being something that's important for nearly full adoption across the profession, and wanted to ensure that we were able to deliver this in a really affordable manner. Now, with that said, this is still an unknown area for a lot of advisors to really wrap their head around the value proposition of online reviews, for the very reason, and you alluded to this earlier, that it's tough to sometimes see that direct allocation or attribution of an online review contributing to a lead. But of course, we know just how important and impactful that can be. Now, with that said, especially with the advisory firms, with a CMO that are looking to come into the space, they're looking at this and saying, wow, this feels almost like it's too good to be true from a pricing perspective. Now, it's not often that they vocalize that for obvious reasons, but we love hearing that as well.
And how would you answer that, Ed, in terms of your view on the making this approachable and affordable?
Yeah, it's spot on, especially because we started with the kind of smaller advisory firms. It was a no brainer that we had to make it affordable from like a upfront cash perspective. There's just you're not able to make these like massive commitments, and also Brian could probably relate to this. There's so many tools that are predecessors that have promised all these absurd results and have asked to get these massive guaranteed spends, and then people are locked in for months or years onto these contracts that are literally like pretty critical to their business, right? And like put into question how much longer they can be in business just to the size and scale of these contracts. So we did not want to do that. We really wanted to make our platform basically plug and play. The second you want to sign up today, you can get started today and have be fully integrated in the same day within an hour of getting started. And B, we really wanted to design our pricing structure such that you only really pay when you see results. And so success oriented versus everyone pays the same, whether it works for you or it doesn't.
Well, I think what both of you are building is phenomenal. I love what I've seen out there. Before we get to our parting shot question, I'll let you think about it for a second. We ask all our guests at the end of each episode a piece of advice, something you want to put out there, a prediction, some outlook for the industry. So that's coming up. But my second and last question for you is this: when you think about the ingredients for what a marketing stack should look like for growth over the next 5 years, what are some of the key ingredients each of you would put in that in terms of not just the technology but the inputs? And Ed, I'll let you go first. Like, what would you put? What would you tell the best practices are in terms of making sure you have your marketing stack set up for success?
Yeah, it's not, and you said this earlier, Joe, it's not this or that, it's this and that. And the value is going to accrue the firms that are doing all of this combined, especially when we're talking about AI search optimization and all of these other things that are becoming more and more important. If you just bang on referrals and you have a bad website, you're not going to, those referrals are going to turn down the offer to meet with you. If you do a lot of outbound, but don't have any great testimonials or credibility or social proof, that's not going to work either. And so it's this plus that is the way to think about it, not which one strategy should I do. There is no silver bullet, unfortunately. But there is, having a fully integrated platform approach where you're thinking about how can I have all these pieces moving at once in an integrated way where we have data flowing through all of it and proper analytics. That's probably where you're going to see the firms winning. That's probably the winning strategy.
How would you answer that question, Brian? What's part of the winning formula in terms of building out the right marketing mix?
Yeah, from my perspective, I would say obviously important to have a modern website and then ultimately a platform like Wealthtender that's the trust layer where you're collecting, compliantly displaying those reviews, having strong social media presence. And then when it comes to the marketing tools that you deploy, not a spray and pray approach, but rather to identify those tools that you're passionate about, that you're really going to be committed to the success, recognizing that once you find those tools that will work for you, like a Finny, and really doubling down on your investment and your effort there in terms of the time and the resources that you're dedicating to it. And then, as Eden suggested, not only just utilizing that tool, but integrating it with your website, with the testimonials, now becomes that much more powerful to ensure that you're getting the greatest value and the ROI from your marketing investments.
Well, I think those are both good insights. I started this conversation earlier saying that I like this pairing because one of you represented what I would call the outbound piece of marketing, one the inbound. But another way I would look at it too is, and set this up, is that it's also the proactive and then responsive or reactive side of marketing from a standpoint of if you believe your customers are actively thinking about the kinds of things that are going to make them want a financial advisor, you need to have something work in the background for you, like what Finny does, and proactively engage and put the idea in front of them that maybe because of this life event. And just the same, and I would say this in a different context, in that if you are participating in any kind of referral program, whether you're friends with the local attorneys and accountants, whether you Schwab or Fidelity has you in their advisor networks, whatever it might be, you're dumb not to have testimonials and Google reviews working for you. Because if someone's getting a referral sent to them digitally, email, text, whatever, and then or even with Smartass or any of these things, and if you don't have the reviews and testimonials, you're wasting your time and dollars spent, because that's going to be the first line of defense in terms of people deciding, do I still want to talk to Brian or Eden or not, right? Like, so these are certain things I think are going to be table stakes. And Brian, in your notes, you had said that there's only 10% adoption on reviews right now over the first 5 years. I would say that by the time we get to another 5 years, it's going to be another at least 50% that adopt. I think the acceleration of this trend will happen. But leaving it there, let's go back to our parting shot. Each of you has a chance here. What do you want our listeners, and remember, they're marketing leaders, firms that run advisory firms. What would you want them to take away from this conversation? Do you have a prediction, idea, piece of advice, or maybe something for industry marketers out there in general that you want to share? And again, ladies first.
Yeah, it's never been easier, and it will continue to get easier to market with personalization at scale. If you're a marketer of a firm with many advisors, you now have many potential marketing angles. And for the first time with AI, we're not going to be rewarding the loudest marketer. We're going to be rewarding the best fits. And so technology actually favors those advisors that know exactly who they serve best and have the systems to really meet those people at the right moment with the right message. And so I think the next decade of advisor growth isn't really going to be about who shouts the loudest. It's who's discoverable, relevant, ready, and specific when that very specific prospect is looking for very specific help in that area. And I think that's going to be really exciting and a pretty big paradigm shift from what we've seen the last 10 years.
Fascinating. Brian, what's your parting shot?
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. We're going to see significant adoption and uptick of online reviews over the next 5 years, especially because now advisors, wealth management firms are seeing their peers and competitors and that social proof that others are succeeding and successfully gathering those reviews. But I think the prediction and the recommendation for the firms listening to this today is to get ahead of that, because we absolutely are hearing from independent advisors that are up against a large wirehouse firm with a prospect that maybe has a couple of $1 million. And the prospect says, why would I trust you, this independent firm? I enjoyed our conversation, but I'm talking to this big wirehouse, nationally well-known brand, and that advisor is telling me all the reasons why I should work with them. And that really resonates. And the independent firm shares their online reviews, and the next day, that prospect moves $2 million to that independent firm, not because of the stars, but because of the stories. They can see the impact that that advisor has made in the lives of their clients, and they also can't find reviews for that wirehouse firm. And potentially that'll be short term. Of course, we know how slowly wirehouses tend to operate. So maybe it's going to be longer before they come around and permit registered reps and advisors there to be able to collect and publish testimonials. That's a massive opportunity for independent firms today, and probably for the next several years, without a multi-million-dollar advertising budget or brand, to be able to take advantage of online reviews, convert more prospects, and ultimately win more business.
Well, both of you brought your A game today. Thank you so much for spending time sharing your thoughts with our audience. Again, Ed Ovadia, co-founder of Finny, Brian Thorp, founder of Wealthtender. Love having entrepreneurial minds that are trying to solve marketing problems for RIA firms. It's been fantastic. Thanks for joining Marketing Matchup.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening to Marketing Matchup, a production of Gregory. If you like what you heard, please listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.